Hello, Tyler Montoya here with EDAD 854, Assignment 7 on communication. This assignment was actually kind of fun for me. Like a lot of you guys have said, I'm kind of a self-proclaimed people watcher, so I got to go out and about and, do my thing and watch people and kind of be that weirdo. But part one of this assignment was we're supposed to select a communication that you recently had and analyzing it using the communication process in the book. And it just happens that it worked out pretty well for me today, um, showing the beauty and frustrating portions that can come along with the communication process. But I was out and about today, went out for lunch. I went to Jimmy John's where I did most of my observations, and then went to Walmart because you figure you go to Walmart, you're going to see all kinds of people there. So that's kind of what I went out and about today to do this assignment, and then at the same time, I had some shopping that I needed to take care of at Walmart. So while I was there, I had a communication with my girlfriend via text message. She needed me to pick up some white T-shirts for us. Next Saturday, we're doing some color fun foam run. I don't know. My girlfriend signed me up for it, and hopefully it should be fun. She says it's going to be, but she needed me to pick up some white T-shirts, some cheap ones that we don't mind getting ruined. So she messages me this while I'm at Walmart and says, "Hey, would you mind picking up those T-shirts we talked about since you're at Walmart?" And I responded with what I felt was a clearly read message. Apparently, that was not the case. So I basically took my message and I wanted to say that, yeah, sure, fine. It's no big deal. It's whatever. I'll pick up your shirt. I'll get that taken care of. What I typed while I was encoding this, into that's that part of the process, and while I was encoding this message, what I wanted to say was real short and choppy because I was busy. Obviously, I was shopping, people watching, and the message didn't come across as I thought it did, which is the problem. So I actually typed fine, comma, whatever, comma, I'll pick up your shirt. So as you can see, after I sent the message, she gets that and doesn't read it the way I meant it. So she receives the message, and in her decoding of that message, she says, she reads this, fine, whatever, I'll pick up your shirt. So once she's gotten that message, she obviously thinks I have some issue going on. There's something I'm upset with her or something. So she decides to take that message, use it, and she calls me about 5 minutes later to give me some feedback. And she asks me, what is your deal? Like, did I do something? Are you upset with me? And obviously, I'm confused at this point. And I just say, I told you I was going to pick up the shirt. What's going on? What do you mean? She's like, you told me fine, whatever. I'll pick up your shirt. And I'm like, well, that's not how I meant it. So obviously, we've resolved that problem now. But it just kind of goes to show that when you send messages in text form only, whether it's text message, email, or whatever, there's like our reading said, there's a lot lost in translation there. So I just thought that was convenient that I was doing my assignment today and I had that communication. I thought it was great I could analyze that in the communication process. So the rest of the assignment, though, is to observe a communication of people, and analyze that and share our observations. So kind of what I did, like I said, I went out to eat today, and before I went shopping, and I stopped at Jimmy John's across the street from Walmart. And while I was there, I actually got a lot of information. Lunchtime at Jimmy John's, lunchtime at any restaurant, I suppose, is going to be where you're going to get a plethora of information. But as I pulled up and got out of my car, I noticed there was a couple holding hands walking in. So right away, I assumed they were a couple, I suppose, because of how close together they were standing, and the fact they were holding hands. They talk about that proximity and how close somebody is. Basically talks about, how well they know each other. So I assume these people were couples again because they were holding hands and they were standing fairly close in proximity. They were in that intimate zone that the book talks about, that 0 to 2 feet. When I followed them inside, once we got inside and they were ordering, obviously I'm behind them in line, and the guy's arm is around the lady's shoulder pretty much the whole time they're ordering. So again, even closer into that intimate zone. So at this point, I'm definitely sure they're a couple. And they go sit down. They sit across from one another, and they talked in low tones the whole time that they were eating. A couple times, he must have said something funny because she would laugh. She laughed and then slapped him on the shoulder, which again, they continue to talk about in the book. That kinesis, I think it is, or kinesics. I don't know. You'll have to forgive me on that. But they talk about, touching and things there, and obviously the more touching there is, the more affectionate the relationship was. So without even talking to these two, I was able to tell that these two were in some kind of relationship. A little more complicated one, though. There was another guy and girl that were there. They were possibly a couple. They were kind of harder to read. I couldn't really tell. They sat on the same side of a small round table. Table was probably maybe a 3x3 table, and they chose to sit on the same area of that round table or the same side within 2 feet of each other. The thing that kind of made me wonder, though, whether or not they were in a relationship or not, they were kind of in between that personal zone and that intimate zone. There was an age difference between the two. Not so much, though, that I thought it was like a dad-daughter situation, but it could have been 7-8 years age difference maybe. But so I really couldn't tell whether or not they were a couple or not. There wasn't a ton of other nonverbal cues that were given for me to be able to figure that out. But I was wondering if they were maybe on a possible lunch break or something, because the man was in a polo and khakis. The lady, however, looked like she was about to go swimming. She had swimming suit on. She had shorts and a cover up on over that, but it looked like she was ready to go swimming somewhere. So I wasn't really sure what their relationship was and how that went. But when I walked in and after I had ordered and seen these two groups, there was a young man about college age standing next to where the order line was, kind of off to the right a little bit, and he was waiting for something, and I could tell he was getting impatient because he kind of had a stern facial expression. He kept shifting his weight, from one side to the other, kind of crossed his arms, and eventually he just sat down, and he kind of tapped his leg or tapped his foot, bounced his leg up and down, until finally someone came over. The guy who had taken my order went over and kind of talked to him a little bit. And he'd gotten what he needed. They shook hands, and the guy left. I was thinking of possibly some type of job interview, and then they'd gotten busy in the middle because the guy who was waiting, college-age kid, he was wearing a shirt and tie, which I felt was kind of out of place in Jimmy John's when everyone else was wearing jeans and just a Jimmy John's T-shirt that they were wearing. So I was thinking it's probably possibly a job interview. And when I saw that, it kind of made me think about, they talk about in the book what you're wearing is important and kind of shows a status, or it gives someone an idea, about your importance or how important you feel something is, So this guy wore, a shirt and tie to a job. Obviously, he's not going to wear a shirt and tie every day, but he wanted to give off a good impression. And it kind of made me think about how I noticed after our reading, and I guess I had noticed before but never really given it much thought, but our superintendent of schools, he always seems to be in a suit and tie and a button-down shirt, and I hadn't noticed, but I can't really think of more than a couple times that I've seen him in a polo rather than a suit. So that does kind of go right along with the fact that people of higher authority tend to wear those, the clothes and how they dress kind of show their level of status, and I thought that was interesting. I also noticed that some of the more serious, I guess you would say, or some of the I don't know how to put it to make a good. Serious is one way to put it. Some of the more professional, I guess, teachers. I don't know. They seem to dress similar. They wear a button-down shirt and tie every day. And, whereas a lot of the other teachers in our school, they'll wear a polo, I think a button-down shirt and tie, for me, it gets very hot every day if I were to wear that. I like to wear them, a couple times a week, but especially during the hotter months, I don't tend to wear a button-down shirt until, it gets cold out. But, and then I also thought over to basketball season. We kind of have a running joke amongst our basketball staff. People always ask us why we decide to wear a shirt and tie for a basketball game as a coaching staff. When other teams' coaches, they don't. Sometimes they'll wear, a basketball jumpsuit, or they'll wear sweats, or something more casual to coach in. And our joke is always, we may not know everything about basketball, but we're going to look like we do, So the joke kind of, after the reading, came to mind, and the fact that, the dress and the way you present yourself does, in fact, relay non-verbally, what your knowledge level is about things, your importance of things. So I just thought it was interesting and wanted to share those. Also, while I was there, at Jimmy John's, I saw a group of construction workers, or who at least I assume are construction workers, because they're building some other restaurants and things on the other side, both sides of Jimmy John's. And they were wearing jeans, boots, bright neon yellow shirt, except for the one guy that was there. He was talking to the rest of the group, and they were all listening. He was wearing a shirt and tie, so I kind of assumed he was, the boss, you would say, the contractor or whoever. But he was talking to the rest of the group, and they were all listening, and I have listening written down here in quotes because it was the same kind of listening that I get sometimes from my students. They sit there and they can just kind of zone out and float off into nowhere. Their hand goes here, and they're not really paying attention. And that's kind of what these guys were doing. And they look exhausted. They were sunburnt. Their faces weren't necessarily sweaty because they'd been inside for a little bit, but they were kind of shiny, and you could tell they'd been outside all day. So these guys were pretty tired, and they didn't seem to be paying too much attention to whoever this guy was. And then I saw a lone man that was sitting there. He seemed pretty closed off. He was hunched over his food the whole time, always talking on his, or not always talking on his phone, but he was always on his phone. Didn't say much. He just seemed like he didn't want people to come over to talk to him. Not sure what he was there for, but he just basically was a very closed-off person and didn't have to say anything to show that he was not interested at all in talking to anyone. And then I saw the manager there or at least who I thought was the manager at Jimmy John's. This person was the only person there. Like I said before, all the other employees were wearing a Jimmy John's t-shirt and jeans. That's their uniform. This guy was wearing polo and slacks. Jimmy John's polo and some brown dress slacks, I think. So he was directing workflow. He's the only one really constantly talking, and he would move from place to place, and everyone else kind of was in their own station. There was the drive-through people. There was the people making sandwiches. There was the people sweeping the floor. There was the delivery people, so they were running in and out of the building. So I assume that one was the manager because, again, they were the only one really talking the whole time. They kind of commanded attention with their presence and demanded everyone else to kind of listen to them, and they were dressed differently. And then there was what I assume was the new guy. This guy, he seemed pretty out of place. He followed the same person around the building like a puppy. He was in that 2 to 4 foot space and would not leave this person alone. And he used a lot of choppy language and was awkward. They had him taking orders in the drive-thru a little bit, and you could tell he wasn't comfortable with what he was doing yet. So that's what I assumed. That's why I assumed he was a new guy. He looked like he was in training. And again, we talk about that choppy language. We talk about the paralanguage and how confident you come off. So to me, because he didn't seem like he was coming off confident, he uses a lot of uhs, ums, and he would ask a lot of questions to the person who was training him. That made me assume he was the new guy and he was being trained. Then we had the sandwich ladies, as I like to call them. They were standing there. They were making sandwiches. It was a pretty busy time, like I said, during lunch. And they were very aggressively making these sandwiches. They were throwing the buns around. They were slapping down the condiments and throwing the different things on the sandwiches. What I felt was pretty violently, but There were quick movements. They had some stern facial expressions. They seemed pretty concentrated in the zone. So they looked like they did not want to be bugged, and they needed to get things taken care of. So that was kind of the nonverbal cues I got from them. I saw the other window lady. She's standing there next to the new guy who's being trained, and the trainer, I suppose. And you could tell she was frustrated. She was standing there. She was getting upset with the sandwich ladies. She had an angry facial expression. She was wrapping her fingers on things, tapping her feet. And she just seemed, she was waiting on those ladies to get their things done, and was getting frustrated with the order guy, the new guy, taking the order because he was not moving at the speed they needed during that time. And then just overall, the workers, they all seemed friendly. They talked, said hi, but it seemed fairly routine to me. Obviously, it's their job to be nice. It's what they do. So, like I said, it just kind of seemed routine. There was a man at the back who had walked in later on. He sat on his phone the whole time. He had a sandwich, didn't really eat, but he sat on his phone the whole time. Seemed relaxed, talked in low tones, kind of sat back, arm kind of like that, leg crossed over, and just seemed very at ease. And let's see, what else did I have? I also saw that when people ordered, they stood a ways back. I noticed that they kind of the zones of how close they were. When they were ready to order, they would step forward to the cash register. However, if they weren't ready, they stood back about 5 or 6 feet, so 7 feet from the counter to kind of show, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to engage in a conversation yet, which I thought was interesting because they talk about in the book. They talk about the distances and where most people do their interaction at. And I just thought it was interesting that they would stand back, and then once they were ready, they would step forward to engage in that conversation. And then the other thing I noticed, 2 more things at Jimmy John's. I noticed a long-haired guy, and I have him written down here as the hippie guy. I know it's probably not the best thing to have said, but he had long hair down to about his shoulders, had a green Bob Marley t-shirt on, had some old faded ripped jeans and flip-flops on. So to me he gave off that whole relaxed hippie type of look based on what he was wearing. And then you talk about kind of how they talk again, his paralanguage, I think. He came off very relaxed. He talked real slow, quiet. He gave a yes sir, no sir, responses, very polite, but he just gave off that typical, again, what I would call a hippie type attitude. He didn't take himself too seriously, he didn't take anyone else too seriously, and like I said, he came off to me kind of as a hippie. So at least from what I could observe. And then the last thing I saw was there's one girl that at first I thought she showed up late because she ran in, you said hollering, sorry, it took longer than I expected. But after that I kind of just realized at least I think she was a delivery girl, and she was out on delivery, and I guess she had gotten lost or something when delivering the sandwich or coming back. It had taken her a little bit longer to get back. But when she showed up, she kind of hurried around for the building for about 5 minutes and just seemed very flustered and ready to go. And then she, after about 5 minutes, grabbed another sandwich and ran out the door. So those are kind of my observations that I saw at Jimmy John's today, and just kind of looking at those. And after reading the section and doing my observations today, it kind of made me look at kind of the things I give off non-verbally and kind of my communications, and kind of analyzing those. For me, one of the big things I noticed, like I talked about before, is how someone dresses really does give off nonverbal cues on their status. Like I said, you saw the manager, he was dressed in a polo and slacks. Everyone else was dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. So that man, I assumed, without even talking to him, I assumed he was a manager. And And again, same thing like I said before with our basketball. We may not always know every answer, like I said, but by dressing up and looking professional, we look like we know more than we might actually know. The other thing that really kind of made me think about was the paralanguage, which is like the variations of speech and voice quality and things. And it kind of made me aware of how many times I say and and so and things like that in these videos, which I'm sure when I rewatch this in a little bit, I'm going to be horrified at how many times I actually did say those things. So, and there we go now. And then looking at I think it's chronemics, kind of talking about the use of time and being early and late in things. And it kind of made me think about myself in the sense that I'm kind of a hypocrite when it comes to this. When someone tells me to be somewhere, my friends set up a dinner and they say it starts at 6 o'clock. They have gotten to the point where they know if they say 6 o'clock, I'm showing up at 6:05 or 6:10. So my friends have gotten to the point where they're starting to tell me if they want dinner at 6 o'clock, they're telling me it starts at 5:45 because they know I'm not going to show up until 5:50 or 5:55. And now they've gotten it to where I'm showing up on time for when they want me because they're telling me to show up early. Now, here's where I'm kind of a hypocrite like that, in the sense that when I set something up, if I set up dinner at 6 o'clock, I am there at 6 o'clock and ready to go. And I've kind of become a victim of my own tardiness in some cases because my friends now are assuming, okay, well, Tyler never shows up on time. So he says dinner's at 6. That means he's actually not going to be there until about 6:10. So we don't have to show up till about 6:15. So it gets really frustrating for me. But again, I'm kind of a victim of my own lateness, I guess you could say. So I think that is all I had set up to talk about. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and thank you for allowing me to share my observations with you. Like I said before, I really enjoyed this assignment. I got to get out and people watch, and it's something I enjoy. I love doing. So hopefully you got something out of the video. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks.